Alright, so originally I was going to do a video today about EmuDeck, but ultimately I decided to put that on the back burner a little bit because I've been absolutely obsessed with Arc Raiders lately. And I'm not just obsessed with it because it happens to be a really solid extraction shooter, although it definitely is that, but rather it just puts such a unique spin on the genre that I really haven't been able to pull myself away from it over about the past week. Now I've spent a fair amount of time with it solo, but then I spent a ton of time also playing with my dad, which led to some hilarious moments. So that's what I wanted to talk about today, is what Arc Raiders is, what makes it a little bit different, and then finally some of the things I absolutely love about it, and a few things I'm not quite so hot on despite the fact that I've been, again, completely obsessed with the game to the tune of about 24 hours in the first week that I've been playing it. So Arc Raiders is a third-person extraction shooter that's taking place in a post-apocalyptic version of Italy. The gameplay loop is mostly going topside, scrounging as much loot as you can, finishing as many quests as you can, and hopefully surviving the whole ordeal mostly unscathed before ultimately escaping back to Speranza, the last subterranean bastion of humanity. Or at least I assume it's the last bastion of humanity. For all I know, in some future expansion we'll have other cities to explore, but for now, yeah. Make your way topside, grab what you can, get in, get out, and hopefully, again, survive mostly unscathed. Because when you are topside, you're not just going to be contending with the roaming Arc robots that populate the landscape, many of which have incredibly devastating abilities like firing rockets at you or tracking you through underground tunnels, but you will also have to contend with other raiders, and that's really one of the things that I love most about this game, is you never really know what you're gonna get. Maybe you'll find another raider who's friendly and wants to help you out on a quest, or maybe you'll run into somebody who only pretends to be friendly to you initially, before ultimately stabbing you in the back right before extraction and taking all of your stuff.
There's so many valuables. I hope you've enjoyed this immensely.
And each run gives you about 30 minutes to explore, breach and loot, combat any resistance that gets in your way, and net you rewards in the form of new items, crafting materials, XP, and currency. And this is definitely a live service game, but I will say of the live service elements that I've seen so far, most of them seem pretty good natured in that Helldivers 2 sort of way. For instance, even though it will definitely let you spend real world money to get cool cosmetics and things like that, you can also work through Raider decks, which is kind of their version of a free battle pass, within which you can also earn the currency you would use to buy better cosmetics and unlock a range of other rewards to make your experience in Speranza all the better. But the elements of the loop don't really matter that much if the gameplay isn't fundamentally well designed, and I'm happy to report it definitely is. The shooting, movement, animation, all of it is perfectly tuned, and the same goes for the progression as well. I never felt like I was blasting through levels to fill out my skill tree, but I never felt so hampered by it that it felt like a tedious grind either. Now I will say the early levels when you're first getting started with the game can feel a little bit intimidating, but that's because all you can really do is depend on free loadouts or a small modicum of just very meager gear, and over time most of the fulfillment that comes from this game comes from gradually getting stronger, unlocking new crafting materials, upgrading your workbenches, and eventually evolving into the type of seasoned raider that has no problem surviving the wasteland, or at least way more prepared than you might otherwise be. And whenever I speak to a gameplay loop in terms of like the actual things you'll be performing over and over and over again in the course of your time with a game, I will say, despite the fact that I'm calling it a loop here, every single time that I load into Arc Raiders, it feels like a completely new adventure waiting to unfold. There have been times where I just try to get in and out as quickly as possible because I'm low on crafting supplies. There have been times where I've gone in with a very specific mission in mind and hoped that I didn't run into a raider who would be antagonistic towards me. And still other times I would load into a map just completely unaware of what to expect and just hope I would run into some friendly along the way, and more often than not, I definitely have.
Hello. We were trying to get the picture of the fallen highway.
Got it.
You got it?
Nice. Yep.
Oh, awesome. You guys want to squat up for a little bit? Shoot some stuff?
Sure.
Yeah, we're gonna just go. We just have free loadouts. We're gonna mess it. Oh!
No!
Oh.
Oh, man. That was so nerve-wracking to watch.
And I have to say that visually and from a performance perspective, this is a really good looking game. It's not the best graphics I've ever seen in the world or anything, but they seem to have placed a particular emphasis on the interplay between light and shadow, which makes interior and exterior environments an absolute joy to explore, if not admittedly sorta creepy sometimes. And adding to that creepiness factor is that they have really put a lot of thought into the sound design in Arc Raiders, because every time you're scrounging around in some subterranean complex or working your way through an old dilapidated apartment building, you will often hear other raiders, and it just sounds pitch perfect. If they're in the other room, it'll sound just muffled enough. If it's somebody who's in the same room as you and it's a very metallic environment like an industrial complex, you will hear everything echo appropriately. And I think my past experience with a lot of live service like titles sort of painted an unfair picture for me where I just expected this would not be a very polished release, but it's pretty well polished. But now let's talk a little bit about what makes Arc Raiders different, and some of the things that I like best about it that really did seem to set it apart from its peers. Because I've definitely played other games like this before, whether it was Tom Clancy's The Division, or Hunt Showdown, or I guess Remnant 2 would technically also qualify. But I think one of the things that really spoke to me most was just how effortlessly they're able to blend PvP and PvE in a way that doesn't make it feel too one-sided towards one or the other. And I think a huge component of that was making sure that the environmental enemies that you face off against, the Ark, are truly threatening, and honestly they create such a harrowing presence whenever you run into one, it's almost always in your best interest to squad up with any raiders nearby and focus your efforts on a common threat. And make no mistake, the Ark enemies are absolutely terrifying in this game. Sometimes you'll encounter skittering spider bots and dank interiors, or roaming rocketeers that fly around the surface who can dish out just massive damage, and intelligently at that. And I am not messing with you in the least when I say the AI in this game is just eerily effective at tracking you down. For instance, the first time I encountered an Ark, I was not really that intimidated at all, and I thought to myself, you know what, this is not a big deal, I'll just run out of range, they'll leave me alone, and that'll be the end of that. But as it turns out, the Ark will absolutely pursue you to the ends of the earth if they're able to, and they'll also dish out some pretty complex maneuvers to make sure they can flank you effectively and find you at a weak spot, or to actually track you from an exterior environment into an interior environment if they can find a good way to get there. Don't get me wrong, it's not impossible to lose a pursuing drone or something like that. I'm just saying that it's challenging enough that you might think twice about drawing their attention at all. I mean, if you can burrow into the depths of a nearby structure or hide in a bush or something like that for long enough, you can throw them off the scent. But I was really unsettled by just how crafty that can be, and that has to be one of the differentiators that really set this game apart for me. And if you've got more than one at a time, that's enough to present a pretty overwhelming threat to almost any raider that you will come across, so more often than not it just, again, makes more sense to squad up with your fellow raiders than to get in one standoff after another. And thankfully I found that to mostly be the rule rather than the exception. Granted, that's a pretty subjective experience, and truthfully I've been knocked out a number of times by raiders who wish to do me harm, but I have to say even the process of getting downed by another raider can be entertaining, and a lot of that really comes down to that proximity voice chat, which encourages you to constantly interact with strangers that you find out and about. It also creates some really tense moments where you first meet another raider out in the open, and you have to initiate conversation with them, and then see how they respond back, and then make a judgment call in the moment as to whether or not you're going to trust this random stranger from the internet.
So what's your approach to new raiders? You just wait and see if they're friendly, or do you just like...
I wait and see because, I mean, you always feel bad when you kill someone who turns out to be friendly.
Well, I'm going to do my best not to kill anybody. I'm like kind of documenting my experience here to try to get a feel for, you know, what this game world is like.
You'll find mainly solo players are friendly, but when they got their whole squad with them that they're teamed up with, then they like to kill people.
Right on,
Yeah.
right on.
And that sort of meta-social component where you're not just trying to see how you will fare against the environment, but how you can utilize the environment and other players within it to see if you can reach your goal, or at least not be, too hindered by somebody else who wishes to do you harm, is a pretty thrilling experience in its own right, and another thing that really does set this apart and keeps me very engaged with this game. But now let's go ahead and do a little bit of pros and cons, or talk about some of the things that I really like about the game, and some of the things that I'm not quite so hot on. And for starters, in terms of things that I really like, I think the fact that it's just a cinematic meme machine is one of the things that really does keep me coming back over and over.
What did you do? What? No.
Because just like when Helldivers 2 launched, and it just created so many cool cinematic moments, Arc Raiders pulls this same trick, but a little bit better, because you don't feel so isolated to just yourself or your circle of friends. Everyone can communicate, and most of the time everybody does.
I made a terrible mistake.
Okay, I got you.
You're the best.
Where are you fighting?
Oh man,
What got you?
I literally was just not looking and then fell off the top up there. How goofy is that?
Oh.
Not my finest moment. How you boys doing?
Good. Have you seen a bombardier anywhere?
I've not seen a bombardier, but there's a leaper up there.
Alliances can get forged and shattered in an instant, and showing mercy to a presumably new player just might get you shot in the back. It's absolutely thrilling stuff, and it's not surprising to me at all that this game is making as much of a splash as it is, something to the tune of like 300,000 to 400,000 concurrent players each day. And another thing that I love that I sort of touched on earlier is it does give you a really solid sense of progression. I mean, don't get me wrong, you will start off pretty weak and incapable, but after a few runs it starts to click, and the more fun shenanigans you encounter in the wild with your fellow raiders, the more hungry you get for it. Plus, outside of just leveling up your character in a way that makes sense in the skill tree, it does feel like it provides a steady stream of cosmetics you don't have to pay for, but still ultimately look pretty good. I know for a lot of the games that I've played in the past, it seems like the free cosmetics always look pretty terrible, but here even the free ones look pretty decent. But beyond the fun of social variables within Arc Raiders or its well-meaning live service approach, I have to say the other thing that really stuck out to me is just how fluid and smooth the movement is. Whether you're ziplining to the top of a new building, or just sliding super fast down a really steep embankment, or if you're trying to do something totally crazy like jump off of a rooftop on top of an arc or something, it all feels incredible and weighty and just perfectly responsive at every turn. And finally, I absolutely love the tension of trying to extract whenever you're topside and you really want to take your loot and go home. Whether you're going to try to escape through a raider hatch with a key, or if you're going to go to one of the elevators that anybody can go to try to extract, it's always a really tense standoff moment because you have no idea if somebody's hiding nearby in the bushes waiting to take you out, or if you'll be able to extract relatively peacefully with no worries to speak of, or maybe help out some raider who's on their last leg and desperately crawling to the extraction point to help them get back safely to Speranza if you would like. This actually happened to my dad with this hilarious exchange that I will show you right now. Sadly, I did not capture his voice, but you can hear just how thrilled this particular raider is that somebody actually helped him get healed up and escape back to Speranza.
And I really don't have much, so really wouldn't be worth.
You have some? Oh my goodness. Yes, patch me up. Oh my goodness, you're a legend. Oh, you're actually a legend. Alright, can you shut it? Can you shut it? Thank you.
Yes. Oh, you're a legend, dude.
Oh my goodness. You have no clue. Thank you, GG's, guys.
Hello.
Although as much as I love the moment-to-moment gameplay and that constant sense of adventure when you load in and have no idea what to expect once you go topside, there are some things that I don't love about the game necessarily, but thankfully I think a lot of these can be ironed out as time goes on, either through patches or quality of life improvements. One of the first things that stuck out to me is there is some interface sluggishness and bugginess that happen to me occasionally. For instance, every now and then when I was navigating in a crafting menu, I might find that my cursor was still locked to a submenu behind it, and I would have to basically hit circle or B a bunch of times to like back out of the menu and sort of relaunch the entire process. It didn't happen a lot, just a few times so far, but I think that's something they can probably iron out as a bug fix later on. Also, it's probably not surprising at all that this game has what Tim Rogers calls trinketitis real bad, in so much as there is a ton of items that you can pick up out in the wasteland, and you're not really sure initially what's valuable or what's not, what you should sell, what you should recycle, what you should scrap, but I mean, what's the alternative, right? This is a game about, a post-apocalyptic world, so naturally resources are precious, and you're not always going to know if you have trash or treasure. And if the game only had like 40 different item types and that was it, it would get boring pretty quickly. I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but what I will say is it will very much have a community component to it where you're probably going to have to look up a wiki a lot of the time to figure out what materials you need to craft for, upgrading your stations, or to make some piece of gear that you've been eyeing lately, or to find out if that dog collar you found should be scrapped, held onto, or sold. Although I will say, if you do find a dog collar out in the world, don't get rid of that because you're going to need it to upgrade your chicken, which I realize out of context probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but trust me, if you find a dog collar, hold on to it. And just know that it's probably weird things like that sound totally bizarre that pretty much necessitate you're going to have some community involvement for a game like this, or at least if you want to fully enjoy it. And finally, the last thing that I'm not overly fond of that I really hope they fix in the future is they really do need to have an ability to do one button press to get your custom loadout ready to go when you leave. As it stands, if you go out into the wasteland, get knocked by another raider, and then just lose everything, well then you have to refill your entire loadout and make sure you've got the right guns equipped, you've got the right ammo that you're taking with you, that you've got bandages to heal up, shield recharges, your shield, your augment that lets you carry things. There's a lot to keep track of, and especially in the early game, it can be pretty tedious trying to perfectly customize your loadout every time, especially for runs where you expect you're going to be out in the wasteland for 20 to 25 minutes, and you load in and get killed in like 5 or 6 minutes and have to do the whole thing again. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's definitely a quiet joy to be had from just painstakingly crafting every piece of your kit and loadout to make sure you're ready for whatever situations you think you'll encounter, but it can get pretty time consuming, and I hope they speed this up in the future. Especially considering that interface is fairly clunky on consoles, but hey, this is probably a game best enjoyed on PC anyways, if I'm being honest. I just happen to play on PS5 because that's where my dad plays. But overall, I have to say these first 24 hours that I've been sucked into this game over just about a week's period of time has left me with an incredibly positive impression, and it's really on my short list for games of the year. So much so that I would say this game is dangerously close to becoming a new forever game for me that just might displace Dead by Daylight as much as I love that game as a horror fan. And it's certainly encroaching on some of the time that I had set aside to work on backlog games that I really want to knock out eventually, but Honestly, if the worst thing that I can say about the game so far is that it's a little bit too addictive, well, I guess that's pretty high praise. Although the highest measure of praise will be if I'm willing to buy a game twice, and honestly, I just might take the leap a second time for this to get the PC version. One, so I could test it on the Steam Deck and see how it performs there, but then also I do think that the mouse and keyboard route just might be a slightly better way to go about this than playing with a controller as I have so far. All of this is to say, when I was initially skeptical of the early footage that I saw of Arc Raiders and just sort of dismissed it as not a game for me, was entirely incorrect, and it ended up becoming one of my favorite games of 2025 so far, and I'm just getting started with it. But hey, what about you? Have you taken the time to check out Arc Raiders? And if so, what has your experience been like? Have you found more friendly raiders out in the open, or more antagonistic raiders who just want to take all your stuff? I would love to hear about your experience, so please let me know in the comments below. As for what's coming up on the channel, I'll certainly be doing a lot more Steam Machine stuff as we get closer to the inevitable launch of that system, and I truly just cannot wait to see what Valve does with this. And beyond that, I'll probably have some light holiday content as well, because we do have Thanksgiving and Christmas right around the corner, so yeah, stay tuned for that. As always, appreciate you taking the time out of your day to hang out here on the channel. It really does mean the world to me. Have an amazing day, and I will see you on the next one.